All I ever wanted was a spot in the mountains with an 8-friend cabin and nobody counting the day. Cursing or praising our names. A little bit of karaoke for you to start this video off. And yes, it's pronounced karaoke, not karaoke. おい、おめえ知ってた？カラオケはね、やっぱり日本人が作ったんだよ。ね、欧米の人たちはカラオケって言って本当に楽しんでるけど、日本人が作ったんだよ。どういたしまして、バカ。Fluent in a polite language like Japanese and yet has the American sass and overconfidence. Terrible combination. Anyhow, the topic of this video is that I think Southeast Asia is the new America. So what do I mean by that? And why did I sing that song at the beginning? By the way, the song at the beginning was called America 2 by The Midnight. It freaking slaps. Lyrics aside, it slaps. But the lyrics of that song is kind of talking about how we were sold this American dream, right? To have a cabin in the mountains, live a life of freedom. And yet we don't have that. The American dream is kind of dead. And so why is the American dream dead? And more importantly, for the topic of this video, why is the American dream alive and thriving in Southeast Asia? So I love Southeast Asia. I mostly live in Vietnam and Thailand. I'm not going to be talking too much about the actual culture here, although it does have something to do with it. I'm going to talk more about human psychology and historically what we see makes people happy and what makes people feel like they belong to a community. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a variety of topics, but please stick around. Don't worry, I'm going to tie it all together. It might sound a bit random, but it's going to make sense. I'm going to be talking about Chinatown in the US. I'm also going to be talking about wars throughout history and how that shaped people's identities. I'm also going to be talking about the infrastructure of the United States and just the geography that makes it sort of impossible for people to really feel like they're at home and to be a part of a community. So if it sounds like I'm going off on all these tangents and talking about random stuff, it's all going to come together at the end and make sense, I promise. If you're watching this, you're probably a Gen Z or a millennial, maybe even a Gen Xer. And maybe this is the case for yourself, but at the very least, it's definitely the case for a lot of people you know. Most people look back at their college and university days as if it was like the glory days, right? That was the highlight of their life. Why is that? Let's put aside the whole capitalism, hustle culture, whatever. The thing that college campuses have is that most of them are very walkable, right? You might even have, it might be located inside of a city, but it's almost like its own sort of world. And there's sort of this camaraderie among everybody there for the most part of like, we have this sort of identity, right? We go to the University of Pennsylvania. We go to the University of Temple. I'm just naming schools in Philly because that's where I'm from. But more importantly, all of these schools, they're walkable. And I'd reckon to say, just from people that I know, that there is a little bit more of a identity with schools that are walkable, that have a campus, than schools that don't. Like University of Phoenix or Grand Canyon University or DeVry or even New York University. The campus is kind of spread out, but there's a much more of a community with people that have a campus, right? And so because of that, these places are very walkable. You can walk to place, everything's sort of condensed. It's easy to feel like you belong. It's easy to feel like you're a part of something. And when you're a part of something, you feel alive. You feel like you belong. But then fast forward, what happens after you graduate? Well, after you graduate, you probably move to some big city. Everything is sort of fractured, atomized. You work for your company. Your other friends work for another company, but you're kind of spread apart. If you want to go visit your family, you have to drive on the highway to go back to the suburbs. Sort of the infrastructure of the US, the fact that it's so spread out, makes it so that we all have to drive in cars. It makes everything feel like there's more of a distance. You know what I mean? And so it's more of a modern phenomena that people have been moving more and more into cities. And in the past, is more so a bunch of people would live in the countryside in these little towns which are more similar to sort of that college campus experience. Okay, so I've set the preface that people tend to be happier in smaller communities. The more spread out things are, the less community feeling that you have. I'm sure you probably agree with that, or at least I probably think that you do. I mean, you prefer to be closer to people that you're close with, right? And so for most Westerners, after college, they don't really have that sense of community anymore. However, you can see some places in the US where that camaraderie and that community is there. And this is where the Chinatown thing comes in, is, I don't know if you've seen this or noticed it, but Chinese people tend to kind of stick together, especially in Chinatown, right? They have their own little like world in there, and they tend to just sort of hang out with each other. And for the most part, they seem happy. They have like their own little lives, right? And so what if I were to tell you that Chinatowns themselves, the fact that they are surrounded by a whole city or a whole society that isn't Chinese, and they all congregate in that area, makes them closer together than if they were all living in China together. Now, this is where we're gonna go into more of the realm of theory and history. There's this book that I absolutely love. It's called War and Peace and War by Peter Turchin. And the subtitle for that book is Why Empires Rise and Fall and Rise Again. And kind of one of the main things that he talks about in that book is that how most great empires, the Roman Empire, the Spanish Empire, the American Empire, almost all these empires you can think of actually developed on what he called a meta-ethnic frontier, meaning that they had an enemy that was close by or somebody that was completely different from them that helped to form a group identity of that one, of those people. And then that attitude helped them conquer the people around them, but then also spread out because they were able to have a sense of identity of saying, okay, well, we are these people, these other people are different from us, we need to stick together. It's gonna be mostly Americans watching this, given the title. So a good example is the colonizers, the settlers, back in the Pilgrim days. There was a high sense of camaraderie among those people, and there was actually a very, there's an emphasis on just being white, right? You know, like whiteness in America used to be a big thing. It's because they came from all these different areas in Europe where normally they would actually look at each other as like different or whatever, but they were so different from the Native Americans, especially the Native Americans they were at war at, that they created this sort of identity of being white, right? Team white versus Team Injun, you know? Put aside all the atrocities and stuff that happened, the sort of identity of whiteness happened because of that meta-ethnic frontier. Now, in the modern day, do we need that? Do we need to have an other that we have contempt for in order to give ourselves a sense of identity? I mean, maybe, maybe not, but if we look at Chinatown as an example, I don't think they're necessarily trying to wage war with everybody around them, but there's more of a sense of camaraderie among those people, among the Chinese within Chinatown, especially if they don't really know how to speak English or speak English well, when they feel like everybody around them is different, right? It's sort of a meta-ethnic frontier in the modern day that's a little bit less based off of war and conquering. And so now I've made the case that living in a walkable community is very important to have a sense of identity and a sense of camaraderie and community. And also, it's important to live in an area that is surrounded basically by others. And so this is where the thesis of this video comes in, if you want to call it that Southeast Asia is the new America. So when you move to any of these Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, normally you're not going to be able to speak the language, especially when you first come here. And so you're going to gravitate toward an expat area. In all of these major cities across Asia, especially Southeast Asia, there's going to be a heavy expat community because that's the only place in which you can get around, right? That's the only place in which all the English speakers congregate. And so similar to how there are Chinatowns in the US, there are expat areas in Asia. And the fact that everybody around you, all the locals and people outside of the expat area can't speak your language and you can't speak theirs and you struggle to speak theirs, makes you feel more of a sense of identity in these expat areas. As Peter Turchin would call it in his book, there's a high sense of asabiya, which is sort of like this group feeling, this group identity, you know? I know we're like very highly individualistic or whatever in the West, but we all want to be part of a community. We all want to be a part of something. And the fact that we live on sort of this meta-ethnic frontier that's hopefully not built off of racism or war. Obviously it's not if it's just an expat area. It helps to develop that group feeling. So you're in this sort of area, like the area that I'm in right now in Vietnam, there's sort of this, it's like a few square miles, not even, a few square kilometers, I should say, of like all the English speakers that are in this area, you know? And it's so easy to meet people because everybody is, you know, they're new here, they're traveling around or whatever, they're trying to set roots down here. And so because of that, it's easy to make friends. Like if I'm back in the US and I just go to some random bar, or even if I'm just walking around in a city, if I just say, hey, what's up, man? Where are you from? For most people, they'll be like, what? What do you mean where I'm from? I'm from here, you idiot. Like, keep walking. That never happened here. I have never, because I've been here now for on and off like for 4 or 5 years. And I've always asked, like my opener to like meet somebody, you know, in a romantic sense or just in a platonic sense is just saying, hey, what's up? Where are you from? I have never gotten a weird look or gotten a weird answer ever. It's always friendly because maybe it's a selection bias of people being willing to travel, go halfway around the world. They tend to be friendlier people, sure. But I think also the fact that you know that there's, like unconsciously, you understand that there's not going to be that many English speakers that you can connect with in a place that, you know, especially like where I'm from in Vietnam, where there's a low English literacy rate, that, you know, you're not going to have a whole bunch of people. You're going to be in a small community. So you're more likely to treat other people in your tribe in this little meta-ethnic frontier. You're more likely to treat them well. And so sort of the American dream, financially, but then also the sense of security and the sense of community that I sort of felt like I was promised as a kid, I feel like I have that here. I have a very strong sense of community. I have very close friends here. Most of them are Westerners. I have a lot of local friends. I mean, my girlfriend's, you know, from this country, and I have those as well. But this sort of group identity and this closeness that it's so much easier to foster and have when you're inside of a small community within a big country of people who are different than you. And again, it's not from the standpoint of contempt or like looking at them as, it's just the language barrier, right? And cultural differences. So you can respect their culture for sure. Obviously I do. I have a Vietnamese girlfriend. I love Vietnamese culture. But at the same time, being in a very walkable area where it's only English speakers surrounded by other people that you can't communicate with helps to solidify that group identity, that asabia, and helping you feel like you're part of a community. And this is not to mention the cost of living here. It's crazy, man. Literally, I mean, I live in paradise. I've probably put some B-roll already in this video of like how great life is here. And you could easily spend less than $1,000 a month here. I know some people that spend less than $500 a month here. That's crazy, I know. They don't eat a ton of food like I do. I'm a foodie and I'm a pretty big dude and I require a lot of protein, so food can get kind of expensive. But even regardless of that, like, it's so easy to live a great life for cheap here. So you have that combination, you have that financial freedom that was promised to you as an American, because we live in like the richest, freest country in the world, right? Sure, buddy. So you're able to have that, and then also actually be part of a community, a walkable community, where you have others around you to help solidify your group identity. Now, there are some expats that just never learn the local language, never try, never ingratiate themselves with the locals. I guess you could do that if you want. That's not my style. I like to have a combination of both, of like trying to, you know, familiarize myself with Vietnamese culture and then also kind of becoming part of that community in a way as much as I can. I mean, I'm not Vietnamese, so there's only so much I can do, but you know, having a Vietnamese girlfriend, having a lot of Vietnamese friends, but also still being able to live like an American, I guess, in terms of attitudes, ideals, and how just interacting with other Americans or other Westerners inside of my little bubble, inside of the city, inside of the expat community, similar to how Chinese people will do that in Chinatown in the US. So to wrap a little bow on this topic, America is too damn spread out, it's too freaking expensive, and there's no sense of community there, right? And so if you are able to actually solve those things, that's the American dream, right? The American dream is to live a life of freedom, a life full of friends and community and purpose, and being rich, or at least being wealthy. And the way that Tim Ferriss defines wealth in the 4-Hour Workweek is not necessarily like having tons and tons of money, but having tons of freedom and being able to live out here, being able to live for a very affordable price, and being able to be part of a community just based off the structure of how everything is and how our minds work psychologically, I feel very wealthy. I don't make tons of money, man. I don't make a lot of money at all. But I feel like a very wealthy person because I have a rich life full of friends. I'm able to do what I want when I want because I live in such an affordable country, and I'm able to make a living, even if it's a very modest living, off of the thing that I love to do, which is talk about philosophy, fitness, self-improvement. So if you feel stuck in America, you feel stuck in the West, I don't suggest anybody just like drop everything and move to Asia. I'd say come out here and vacation here first so that you can sort of see what it's like, you know? See what it's all about, right? And so you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. But try to stay an extended time. And, you know, maybe like a month or two if you can afford to do that, if you can take off work that long. But I think that way you'll sort of actually kind of understand what I'm talking about. And so yes, Southeast Asia is the new America. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Am I crazy for saying that? I don't think I am. I feel like I made a pretty good case for why it is. And, you know, this channel is called Beyond Self-Improvement. So we don't just talk about self-improvement for self-improvement's sake. It's important to talk about the environmental circumstances that prevent you from living a great life and being able to manipulate those circumstances in your favor to make sure that you are living the life that you want to live. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'm actually going to provide some additional thoughts on this on my Instagram. And so if you want to go check that out, see some additional thoughts, or even just, you know, have a dialogue with me in my DMs or whatever, go ahead and follow me at Beyond Self Improvement on IG. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Goodbye.